Hello, I'm Sally and I'm a mental health first aid instructor.
Hi, I'm Anne and I'm a mental health first aid instructor.
It's time to talk day. Anne and I are ready for our conversation. We want to bring you lots of tips and insights on how to start mental health conversations, whether that's for yourself or for others. So hopefully you'll take some skills away to your everyday lives and maybe the workplace as well. Okay, so we are going to get straight into our conversation. So, pulling out our first post-it note, 64% of people say they put on a brave face rather than speak up. 47% don't want to burden others with their problems. I totally get that.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I can totally relate to this. That's why I became unwell in 2016, because I was just so worried about burdening people with my thoughts and my feelings. And it didn't serve me well because my mental health completely spiraled to a point of severe depression and anxiety. So I can totally understand that, you know, when people have got busy lives, they're worried about money, cost of living, global events happening, world news, that actually they're dealing with enough, as well as their kids and elderly parents and caring responsibilities. You kind of think, well, they've got enough going on. I don't know if I want to add to that. But certainly from that lived experience, I know that the people who love you would much rather know about it than not know about it, and so you become really, really unwell. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think it's probably a lot higher in reality. None of us want to burden our nearest and dearest with our problems, do we really? We do tend to bottle things up until we're ready to talk. But that's what this conversation is all about. It's about opening up and talking more and sharing what's going on with us. And like you, back in the day when I first started to experience problems with anxiety and panic attacks, I wasn't talking about what was going on. I didn't feel like I could share it. A lot of it was very personal. So there's only a limited number of people you really want to share very personal thoughts and feelings with.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did bottle it up and it did start eating away at me. And it was probably going on for years, you know, little bits here and there. And then boom, it all just sort of exploded in 2016 when I was pregnant and I couldn't cope with it anymore. And it wasn't until a couple of years later that I was sharing what happened with me on LinkedIn, etc. And people started reaching out to me and saying, I wish I'd have known. I went through the same thing. I could have helped you. You weren't alone. I got some lovely messages from old colleagues along those lines, and you know that I went through the same thing. It was tough, but you know I wish I'd have known. And so there's always people there. Sometimes the most unexpected people who you wouldn't realize would have been there for you.
Yeah.
But it is tricky to work out who you go and talk to about this stuff.
Yeah.
You don't want to be rejected. You don't want people to look at you going, really, you know, you've got a great life. What have you got to be anxious about? What have you got to be depressed about? You know, get on with it.
Yeah.
And especially if you've been quite high functioning before then and people see you as quite confident and outgoing and copes really well with under pressure.
You're settled, you know, you've always got your ducks in a row. You seem to be the one that you've got the things in order.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And actually deep down we all need help and support through difficult times in our life, whether it's when we're pregnant, whether it's because we're moving house or we've got a relationship breaking down, whatever it might be, changing jobs.
Yeah.
You know, there's just a myriad of things that come along in life and can knock us for six. For me, it was my pregnancy. And I wish at the time I had have been a little bit braver, I suppose, to put my heart on my sleeve and sort of reach out for a bit more support, because I would have got it. Yeah.
And this is so true. I think, you know, when I came through my depression, I came out of it thinking, if I'd spoken up sooner, I wouldn't have become as unwell. And the supportive people were there, the non-judgmental people were there. I think sometimes it is about trying and testing, finding that who, because you don't want the unsolicited advice. You don't want people judging you. Why are you feeling like this? You've got this and you've got that and you've got the other. Well, that's not helpful. I'm still feeling this way. So sometimes it is about trying and testing. But, you know, I've found some amazingly supportive people, and you know, they are my common go-tos when I'm having a down day, I'm having a bad day, I'm not feeling good at the moment. You know, I'm lucky that, you know, I live with my other half, and so he's very much a strong pillar in my life. But I also have my friends around me who I can, you know, message and say, you know, I'm not having such a great day today, or, you know, when are we next meeting up for a coffee? I need to have a rant about something, or when are you free on the phone? What does that look like for you? just to try and get it out as soon as you possibly can, because it could just be a vent, and that's all you need for 10 minutes. You don't need advice and you don't need solutions. You just need that non-judgmental listening ear, that safety to just blurb it all out, and then, you're kind of good again. So how do you speak up when you need support?
Oh, that's a tricky one, because I find it really difficult actually when I'm in that moment. If I'm experiencing some anxiety about something that's happening, if I'm particularly stressed that day, I'm not in a good place to talk about it. It takes me quite a while to process what's going on. So even though I know that I get anxious and I can panic about things, it's normally the next day after I've slept on it that I realise, oh yeah, I wasn't having a good day yesterday. It's difficult for a lot of people, I think, to really speak up in the moment when they're struggling. Stress and anxiety play all sorts of tricks on us in the moment. So I think talking about it after the event is for me what works best. It does help me the next time I'm in that place, and I'm not saying it doesn't prevent these things from happening again in the future, but I can always look back and say, oh yeah, it felt really bad in the moment, but the next day I was fine again, or the next week. And I try and look at it in that way, will I really feel this way? Will I care about this that much in 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months? Looking back, oh, it actually wasn't that big a deal. So I do struggle to talk about things in the moment when I'm struggling, but sleeping on it, coming back to it the next day. Normally my husband will recognise if I've had a bad day, and he'll wait, and he'll wait until he knows I'm ready, and then he'll ask me, how you doing? What's going on with you?
Yeah. So we're thinking about that who again. That's so important in this, isn't it? I think that's quite a usual thing actually. When you're really struggling, you might not have the energy to pick up the phone, to send that message, to have a conversation with someone. I think that's quite a common experience. Certainly for me, if I am having a low day, my partner's likely to pick up on it, and he might say, what's going on? And I would probably say, I'm not having a good day, I'm not feeling good. And the safety for me is going for a walk, just walking it, airing it, and actually you can just talk so freely, especially, sometimes eye contact can feel really uncomfortable, right, for some people. So actually when you're going for a walk and talk, or even in the car conversation where very little eye contact's expected, that can be really helpful in breaking down the barriers and just being open and honest. And you don't have to read their body language. They might, you don't know what they're going to do with their eyebrows. They might frown or look surprised, but actually you don't have to worry about it because you don't see it. And it just creates that freedom to talk openly. So I know for me, walks and talks, or sometimes just watching a movie with a friend, but we're not actually watching it. It's on in the background. We might just dip in and out of it, but we're just hashing things out and talking things through. So it doesn't have to be like a big, massive deal of, I'm going to have a mental health conversation. It's just want to connect with someone, get stuff off my chest, know that I'm not going to be judged for it, and just take my time, and there's no pressure on it as well.
Yeah, I love having one of those old-fashioned phone calls with a friend. I would say all of my friends I don't live near anymore, so we do catch up in person, but for most of the time we're on the phone. And in my pajamas on the sofa, a good old-fashioned phone call is wonderful when I'm just on my own. I haven't got a child or a husband to be looking after, and I just got an hour or two to myself, and having a little chat, maybe just 5 minutes to talk about a difficult moment or a difficult day that I had. And then once I've got it off my chest, the other 95% of the conversation is just catching up. And because suddenly once you shared that problem, it just goes away. And then you can talk about what's been going on with you, holidays, films you've watched, funny stuff that you've seen, and just chit-chatting about nothing really, as friends do. And that's a really good feeling for me, to just offload. And I've probably only got 2 or 3 friends that I really do that with
you.
I'd love to obviously be doing it in person with them, but in the absence of that, pajamas, sofa, cup of tea, get on the phone with no time limit, just to waffle on for an hour or so, and it feels great afterwards.
I think the more we talk about it, the more it creates safety for people to then talk about what's going on for them, because no one is alone with it. there's a lot to be worried about in the world right now. And yeah, just recognizing that, communicating, it's powerful. I mean, that's it.
It is powerful. Yeah, once you've shared that problem, that is it. I mean, the old cliche, a problem shared is a problem halved.
Yeah.
I would go as far as to say a problem shared with the right person,
Yeah.
when you're in the right frame of mind, is problem solved.
Yeah, or at least 90%. 90% there. Okay, so our next talking point. In our poll, we asked what stops people from checking in on someone. Most common reasons were fear of rejection or resistance, and not sure they'd know how to help. So what are your thoughts on that one?
I think that's a common fear that many of us have. I have to say the mental health first aid course really changed that for me, especially in one of the topics we cover, which is active listening.
Mm-hmm.
And learning active listening as a skill really helps you move past that fear. Because once you understand that somebody's problems have probably been going on for months, years, if not decades. As mental health first aiders, we're not there to fix people's problems. They just can't be fixed. And really, the only person who can fix their own problems is themselves. I truly believe that everybody has their own answers to their problems in the right environment with the right support around them, obviously. So it's unrealistic to think that you could help everybody and fix all of their issues in one conversation or even multiple conversations. It's not about fixing people's problems. I think just giving somebody the gift of listening is the most wonderful thing that you can do for a person who's struggling. You know, creating that space, that safe space for them to open up and feel safe and secure, to be able to share what's going on inside, is so lovely. It's just such a nice thing you can give to somebody.
Yeah.
So if you see somebody that's struggling, don't hold back. You can't say the wrong thing. If you come in with good intentions and, you know, good positive energy, they'll know that you care and that you want to help them. So I would always just recommend asking them again, how are you doing? Do you want to have a chat? You don't seem yourself.
Yeah.
What's going on? You know, do you want to just have a chat? Let's go for a walk. Let's have a cuppa. Whatever works for the two of you with the relationship that you have. And just don't feel like you have to give them advice and solutions and fix their problems.
Yeah.
Just listening and not interrupting and hitting them with 20 questions is just going to help somebody massively, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know how you feel when you've been able to offload a problem with somebody. They didn't interrupt you. They didn't finish your sentences.
Yeah.
They didn't try and give you all this advice and tell you, you know, oh, you should do this, you should do that.
Yeah.
Just for them to listen and create that really nice space where you can just open up, and it's just lovely, isn't it? What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the most helpful thing we can do. There is this massive fear of, what do I say? What do I do? What if I say the wrong thing and make matters worse? What if I don't have the answers? And I think that's the beauty of these conversations is you're not the mental health expert, you're not the qualified professional, and you're not meant to be either. This is about giving people space to talk about the uncomfortable. Give them the time to share their vulnerabilities, and that is often what people need. When people are feeling, you know, under the weather, or how you want to describe it, they don't want the solutions. They just want to share it. They want to get it out. And that is such a huge gift, as you said, is, you know, really actively listening, you know, not butting in all the time. We have a tendency to do that because we want to respond. We don't listen to understand. We listen to respond. We listen to reply. But actually just hold it. Allow the silences. Wait for the comfortable pauses. Be curious. Ask questions. Park judgment. You know, you might be thinking, why on earth is this person feeling like this? I don't understand. This is not stressful, but it's their stress. So you've got to accept that this is their stress. Yeah, I think there is this big fear around, you know, I don't know how I'd help. Listening is all you need to do. That can be enough. And maybe you could signpost potentially, thinking about, you know, all sorts of resources of support, whether that's professional support or something available in the community. Somebody might feel out of their depth. That's okay. Thank you so much for sharing with me. I'm so glad we're talking about it. I can't even begin to imagine how you're feeling right now, but I'm so glad you've told me. What are the ways that you might open a conversation with someone if you recognise that potentially they're struggling? What tips can you give people in terms of getting that conversation started?
Well, I try and start things quite light-hearted.
Mm-hmm.
I think sense of humour is always a good icebreaker, isn't it? So it's always good to have a bit of a laugh about something silly at first, build a bit of rapport with somebody, establish that trust. Maybe a conversation about somebody's mental health really doesn't start until 15, 20 minutes into a conversation or even longer.
Yeah.
And really it's between two people who really connect on an energetic level, I think, and feel relaxed and comfortable, will really have a productive conversation. So if I think that I'm not the right person, then maybe I'll go and speak to the person that would have that more effective, productive conversation, and suggest to them that maybe that person is struggling and maybe they're the right person to go and talk to them about it.
Yeah.
So not ignoring a situation because I might not be the right person, but recognizing that there surely will be somebody who can connect with that person and have that conversation, and just not to ignore it and think, well, I'm not their friend, or I don't work in their team, or I might say the wrong thing. I'm not equipped to be able to help this person. I don't know them well enough. And in those situations, absolutely, of course, there's going to be people who you don't know well enough to have these conversations with. And if you're not comfortable having that conversation, that's absolutely fine. It probably then wouldn't be a helpful conversation. So finding somebody that is, and suggesting maybe that they go and have that conversation might be the right thing to do in certain circumstances. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I do wonder if that's where this fear of rejection and resistance comes from, is, well, am I the right person? Would they be open to speaking to me? Or maybe I'm not, and that's okay. I'm not going to take that personally. Maybe I can point them in the direction of somebody else, or maybe I could speak to somebody else about my worries or concerns. Again, this fear of rejection, resistance, it might relate to the things we've already spoken about people feeling like a burden, and maybe that's why they're kind of shutting things down. But building the trust, building the connection, that's really the starting point. The starting point is actually trying to build the relationship in the first place and build the trust, and letting people know, it's okay to have bad days. We all struggle at different points in time. It's all part of being human, and some days I feel 9 out of 10, some days I feel 4 out of 10. Today I'm a 7 out of 10, and that's similar for a lot of people. We're not always going to feel 10 out of 10. Actually, wouldn't be appropriate as a human to feel 10 out of 10 all the time. I'd probably be a bit worried if I was feeling 10 out of 10 all the time when I'm facing adversity or something. I'm feeling really good about this, really difficult life event I'm going through. I'd probably be worried about that. So trying to normalise the fact that we can have bad days, and that's okay.
I'm working on getting you up to an 8 out of 10 today, Sally.
And on the fear of rejection, resistance side of things, I think there is this common worry that actually, what if I've got it wrong? What if I say something and I offend them because actually they're fine, but I'm saying, you don't seem yourself at the moment? I think that comes up quite a lot in the courses, actually. And ultimately, if we're coming from a good place, we've got good intent, we care about people, and we have noticed something, and it might have been like a tiny thing, I think it's still worth opening that conversation, because it still gives that person the opportunity to open up if there is something actually going on. And I don't know if you find this in your courses as well, but sometimes I get this question of, what happens if they are having a bad day, because we all have bad days, or what actually if they are in crisis? How can you tell? Well, you don't really know until you actually start the conversation with that person as well. We're not mind readers.
No, but I think we ignore our gut, and if our gut is telling us that something's not quite right, we should listen to that and go with it. And it's really difficult to offend people, I think. If somebody asked me, are you okay? You don't seem yourself lately. Is there something you want to talk about? And I am genuinely fine. I'm not going to get offended. I'm just going to say, no, I'm actually fine, thanks.
Yeah.
I think we should listen to our gut a lot more, and, our spidey senses. Yeah. We know if somebody's, especially if we know the person quite well, we know if they're not quite right. It may just be that they're not ready to open up and talk to us yet. Yeah. So not to put too much pressure, just to let them know that you care, you're there, and when they're ready, they might come back and talk to you. And that might be tomorrow, it might be next week. But just keep at it. A little bit of gentle pressure, I think, is good if you really are worried about somebody. You might need to just, go around try different ways of getting into someone. So you do have to persist and also know when to back off and tackle things from a different angle. But I think it's quite hard to offend somebody, so I wouldn't be too worried about that. Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely talk about polite persistence on the MHFA course, and being patient as well. So they may not be ready for that conversation immediately. So if you do, say to someone, you don't seem to be your usual self today, you're a lot more quiet in the meeting this morning. It might be, that they're saying, I just had a really bad night of sleep with the kids last night. And okay, well, I just want you to know, if you're not okay, I'm here to listen to you. And then you might notice over the next couple of weeks that actually there seems to be a bit of a repetition. I've noticed a number of bad days. This person seems to be a lot more quiet. They're a bit up and down, or whatever that might be. And just taking stock of that. It might be initially that there was a problem, but again, they just weren't ready for it. But taking that opportunity to come back, check in, also check in with people on the good days as well. I think that just helps to normalise around, how you're doing today. And I'm feeling really good today. Oh, fab. Yeah, I'm having a good day as well. And then maybe it feels a bit more natural. We're not just talking about the bad side all the time, because then people, it's always so negative when we're talking about mental health. Well, actually, we can have good and positive days as well. And why don't we celebrate and talk about those as well? I think that's a good thing to do.
Yeah. Okay, Sally, let's have a look at another one.
Okay, fab. And I think this is going to be about in the workplace. We're thinking about mental health at work now. 45% of people feel uncomfortable discussing their mental health at work due to fear of negative repercussions. 52% of people say that when there's mental health support in place, they feel more productive and engaged. So what are your thoughts around this?
I think the workplace has changed a lot in the last 5 years since I've been an MHFA instructor. And I think workplaces are much more open to discussing this. Maybe not everybody in the workplace, but I certainly think we've come a long, long way. Where somebody feels that talking about mental health isn't going to be well received at work because of a specific manager or just simply the workplace culture, which I can appreciate, then I find people generally don't have a problem with talking about stress. So just to replace the words mental health with the word stress, everybody experiences stress. It's a perfectly normal human emotion to feel and is often the trigger for mental health issues. So we should absolutely be talking about stress, what causes stress in our lives, what triggers stress, how we cope with it, how we can relieve stress. And yeah, I'm pretty sure in workplaces, talking about stress with a peer or with your manager, with a friend at work, will not have any repercussions because everybody's experiencing it. And if you think there's somebody at work that is not stressed about something, and it might not be work related, it might be home related, then I would say that's just not realistic. We all experience stress, and some people cope better with it than others, and that all comes back to our window on the world, really, doesn't it? And how we see the workplace and what's going on at home and in our lives and what our upbringing was like. So I would hope now that any negative repercussions would be non-existent, because workplaces do have a duty of care and are more open to talking about mental health and getting people the help that they need. But of course, there's going to be some barriers, and there's going to be some people that you work with that don't believe in mental health and think that it's not a discussion for the workplace. And I would perhaps just switch it to talking about stress. Stress is a big problem for employers. A big problem. It's costly for them. Absenteeism, presenteeism, it's a big issue. But I'm coming from the financial services industry, so that's my perspective on it. What's yours?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. We have moved forward a lot when it comes to supporting wellbeing in the workplace compared to where we were, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I think it has been in the forefront of people's mind, and events in recent years, I think people have started to really reprioritise the mental health agenda and the wellbeing agenda. That when I think about this statistic, this was a year ago, so Time to Talk Day, this 45% of people feeling uncomfortable, this was taken from a year ago. So a lot of progress has been made, but there's still a lot of fear. And I think that's, around the stigma associated with poor mental health. Have they seen people be treated badly, demoted? I've heard stories of people being disciplined and, exited from an organisation because it's just too hard. It's just too hard. And actually, the time hasn't been taken to understand people's needs. Because people might experience anxiety. A lot of people can manage it on a day-to-day basis. It doesn't mean that they're not going to be able to perform and they're not going to be able to progress and be productive, but these negative assumptions can be made because people aren't necessarily educated around that as well. So it is a shame to still read this. And I think industry-wise, some are much more forward-thinking compared to others. And I think probably from our experience where we've delivered training, I've delivered training in organisations, and there's a lot of work to be done here. We've got some very kind of dated views, perhaps, where you leave your stuff at home and your stuff at home stays at home. You don't bring it to work, and it's, well, I wish I could compartmentalize my life like that. Yes. Wouldn't that be the dream?
Yes, we're not robots.
No. But it does make me feel sad that people don't feel comfortable opening up about their mental health. And again, that relationship, who can we speak to? It could be your manager. Again, I've had some amazing managers who I feel like I can open up to, and other times I've had managers where I'm kind of like, you are clearly not a supportive person, right? Where's my tribe? Where am I going to find my tribe? And that might be with colleagues, or indeed it might be a personal relationship where I'm talking about my mental health and things that are going on at work as well. Mental health first aiders as well, I think, can be really powerful, because sometimes people want to speak to those who are familiar, but also someone completely objective. You don't know who I am, what I'm about, and sometimes people find it much easier to just talk to a complete stranger as well.
Can I pick one, Sally?
Yeah, fire away.
Let's have a look. Okay, organisations with mental health training for managers report a 30% reduction in mental health related absences, and a 20% increase in retention rates.
Okay, so we see the immediate benefits, right? When we think about workplace culture and embedding wellbeing as a strategic priority, you can start to see the benefits. People are happier, they're healthier, they're more likely to be engaged and productive. Healthy person, healthy people, healthy teams, healthy organisation. You're going to reduce costs in a massive way, because people aren't going to be leaving. You then don't have to pay people to get others on board, and then the training period and all of that kind of stuff as well. I think mental health first aid training can certainly form part of an organisation's strategy towards wellbeing, but it's not the end point. It's not the answer. We need to be embedding wellbeing every single day, and really getting to a point where workplace adds to people's wellbeing, rather than people feeling like they're completely exhausted, they're completely drained at the end of every single day. Actually, the workplace is taking away from their wellbeing. We need to kind of flip it on its head now. So we need the policies and procedures. We need a more preventative and proactive approach as well. Asking people to do 70-hour weeks, but saying, we really care about your health and wellbeing. Well, tell me how that adds up, because those two things to me don't align to me. Whereas, mental health first aid is great. Employee assistance programs, fantastic. We can get Bupa healthcare and all of those good things, but that's almost a reactive. We're waiting for things to go wrong. We know that prevention is better than cure. So what are we doing at the front end to try and prevent, poor mental health from arising in the workplace and affecting people's lives much more broadly? What are your thoughts? What are your insights on this one?
Well, I've looked at studies from Canada, from Australia, in the UK that show us how mental health training for managers specifically has these very positive impacts on productivity, reducing absenteeism, reducing presenteeism, and essentially creating a workplace culture, an environment where people do feel supported. And like you said, all of the other positive effects that it has on the workplace. And I know from personal experience, when I was trained as a mental health first aider, although I wasn't approached by people who were experiencing mental health problems directly on a very regular basis, I was more approached by managers who were struggling in how they were supporting their team members and their staff. And they would come to me and say, there's this guy or girl in my team, and I think they're struggling with something, and I don't know what to do. I don't know where to point them. I don't know what to say. I'm worried about saying the wrong thing. And this is an issue in the UK because the Health and Safety Act tells us that employers have a duty of care to their staff. And if you have a manager who is not trained in this area, they can potentially give the wrong advice or say the wrong thing. We expect managers to be technical leads, project managers, specialists, And then we also expect them to be people leads, team leads. We expect them to be therapists. We expect them to know everything and how to look after our people.
Yeah.
And it is a lot to ask of a team leader or a manager. And to not give them this training is, I think, letting your employees down. It's so effective. Just some simple techniques on how to listen, how to support somebody in a crisis, how to signpost them, what to do next. I've had countless stories where managers have told somebody who's feeling panicked, struggling with depression, possibly even suicidal, and they've simply been told to take the rest of the day off, go home, relax, see how you feel tomorrow.
Yeah. And I've seen emails literally saying, pull yourself together.
This is a huge risk for UK employers.
Yeah.
And that's why I think these statistics are useful, and the whole studies actually, they are a real eye-opener for employers. This is important. Your managers need this training.
They want the training as well.
They
That's
do
what's
want
so fascinating. Managers are asking for this training. They want to be equipped. They want the tools. They don't want to feel like they're floundering and not empowered to have these conversations. Well, they want to feel skilled to get that balance between, okay, I need to support you, but equally, I can't fix it for you. And how do I tread carefully and make sure I'm positioning things in the right way? We know that managers are screaming for this training. They're desperate for it because they need that support to help themselves as well, because then they feel like, oh, I'm taking on everybody's problems and I've got to fix all these things. And actually, that's not the manager role either. So how do you manage all of those boundaries with doing your technical work and your project work, as well as doing your people manager work? With my HR background, we always had conversations around, if you're a people manager, that should be 50% of the role and half of it should be technical. But we rarely see that happening. It's, you still got all your technical work and now we're adding on the people as well. How does that work? We need to be looking after the managers too.
Yes, otherwise it becomes a burden on HR, because the problems then just get passed on.
Yeah.
And often then, once it does reach HR, it's too late, and the employer then has an issue on their hands that could have been solved much earlier on.
Yeah, 100%.
And managers don't need to do the full two-day MHFA course. There's the one-day champions. The awareness course is a good taster. But the managers that come on the courses that I run and that we run, certainly the feedback that we get is, wow, I wish I'd have known this 10 years ago. I need this in my role. Yeah. And I can now be a more effective manager. Because at the end of the day, they do care about the people they work with, on a personal level. We are not robots. We don't come into work and leave the rest of our life at home. We bring it into work. It's difficult not to. So teams, particularly teams that are very close and do work those very long hours together, they know each other very well. They know when one person's struggling, but they just may not know how to bring up those conversations and support those people. Yeah. I'm not saying that the MHFA training is the only way, but I know in my experience how effective it has been, and the feedback that we get is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And even the live feedback you get in the room, like, I wish I'd done this 10 years ago. Thank you for creating so much safety to have this conversation and really explore all of this, and people walking away feeling so much more empowered and confident, and that's why we do it, right?
Absolutely.
Well, that's it from us. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. We hope you've had some really helpful takeaways that you can move forward with. It's always time to talk.